For our math warm-up today, I have 4 inequalities listed here. So if you would, number your paper or your dry erase board from 1 to 4. And basically what you're going to do is just look at the inequality and determine whether it is true or false. So go ahead and pause your video, complete those 4 problems, and come on back when you're ready. So let's take a look to see how you did. We have 1/2 times 3 is greater than the whole number 3 would be false. 5/6 times 3/5 is less than 5/6. That is true. 2 1/2 times 3/3 is equal to 2 1/2. That is true. And 5/6 times 3/4 is less than 3/4. That is also true. For our math message today, you're going to need to get out your student math journal and open to page 237. So you might want to pause your video so you can get that out. And we're going to take a look at these 12 problems. So notice at the top of the page, we have an example. They said if the red circle is worth 1, what is 3 red circles and these fractional pieces worth? So they're telling us a mixed number name would be 3 5/6. 3 5/6 means 3 plus 5/6. And if we wanted to take that 3 5/6 and turn it into a fraction, we would literally take these red pieces, the wholes, and trade them for sixths. And we would end up with 23/6. So what you're going to do for this first part is you're going to write the following mixed numbers as fractions. And of course, you can use your fraction circle pieces or fraction number line to help you if you need it. And then for the second set, you're going to write the fractions as whole numbers or mixed numbers with the greatest whole number possible. You may use your fraction circle pieces again or your fraction number line poster to help you. So go ahead and pause your video now and complete those 12 problems. Okay, so let's check to see how you did. So number 1, you should have gotten 5/3, 2, 13/5, 3, 23/4, 4, 31/5, 5, 39/8, 6, 18/4. And then we jump down to the bottom section, number 7, 2 1/3. 8, notice this looks a little different here. Your answer should be 2. Number 9, 4 2/4. 10, 3. And 11, 42/5. And 12 would be 2. Our lesson today is multiplication of mixed numbers, and this is part 2. Our reason for our lesson today is to be able to rename factors as fractions and multiply using an algorithm. We're going to do that by making sense of problems and learning a multiplication strategy that is most useful when multiplying mixed numbers. So let's take a look at our first practice problem. We have 3/4 times 1/6. So I want you to be thinking before we start, will the product be greater than or less than 3/4? Think about that for a minute. The product will be less than 3/4 because 3/4 is being multiplied by a number that is less than 1. So the product will also be less than 1/6 because we are taking only a fractional part of 1/6. So to multiply two fractions, We're going to multiply the numerators of the factors to find the numerator of the product. We're going to multiply the denominators of the factors to find the denominator of the product. So, thinking about what I just said, if I'm going to multiply my numerators, I would have 3 times 1, which gives me 3. And if I multiply my denominators, I have 4 times 6, which gives me 24. So this would be 3/24 of a unit square. So let's take a look at what that might look like if we used an area model to solve it. Okay, so you'll notice that I've now set up an area model for looking at 3/4 times 1/6. So I've divided this direction into fourths to represent our first fraction of 3/4. And then along this side, I divided it up into sixths since our second fraction or factor has a denominator of 6. So then we would go about taking a look at what would we shade in, right? So it's 3/4, so I'm going to locate 3/4 and I'm going to go up 1/6, and then I would shade in this section. And we have 3 parts of that shaded out of a total of 24. So this does match with our problem here, 3/24 for an answer. So this would be the area model to represent this same problem. Notice that the first factor has a denominator of 4, so I divided this into fourths, and then our second factor had denominator of 6, so we divided this area into sixths, and then we went up to 3/4, or went over to 3/4 and up to 1/6 and shaded in that section to show what our answer would be using an area model. All right, so let's take a look at this practice problem. We have 2 times 1 2/3. So I've got a whole number and I've got a mixed number. What I want you to think about first of all is, will the product be greater than or less than 2? The product will be greater than 2 because 2 is being multiplied by a number that is greater than 1. The product is also going to be greater than 1 2/3 because I can think to myself that I'm making 2 groups of 1 2/3, which is more than 1 2/3. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to use a fraction multiplication algorithm to complete this problem. And in order to do that, our first step is going to be to rename each or both factors as fractions. So our whole number 2 is going to become 2/1, and our mixed number 1 2/3 is going to become 5/3. So then we are rewriting this problem as 2 factors of fractions, not a whole number and a mixed number. So now we're going to use our algorithm that I mentioned earlier. So that means we're going to take 2 times 5 because we're multiplying our numerators, and we're going to take 1 times 3 because we're multiplying our denominators. And so we're going to get 10 as our numerator and 3 as our denominator. Now, what might that look like if we made an area model? Okay, so if we put that problem in an area model, it would look something like this. So our first factor was the whole number 2. So I first took the square here and I divided it into 2 parts. So this would be the whole number 1, whole number 2. Our second factor was 1 2/3, which told me that I needed to divide that left side into thirds. So I started with 1/3. This would be my whole number 1. And then I'm showing you where 1 2/3 is going to end up, and then the whole number 2. So we would then go about shading in where those factors line up. So I'm going to go over to my whole number 2, and I'm going to go up to 1 2/3. And then I'm going to shade all of that in, because that is what we would do to represent this in an area model. So then when we take a look at the shaded portion, we have a total of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So here's my 10 thirds. So as you can see, using an area model or using the regular multiplication algorithm, we come up with the same answer. We can then decide if we are going to leave our answer as a fraction or turn it back into a mixed number. Okay, so let's go ahead and do some practice with a few more problems. And what I would like for you to do is go ahead and pause your video and see if you can do this first one yourself, and then we'll do a couple of them together. Or if you want to do all 3, you can try those as well. Okay, so let's take a look at our first problem. I took 6 2/3 and I converted that to a fraction, which became 20 thirds. And then I took 2 1/4, converted it to a fraction, which was 9/4, multiplied those together, got 180 over 12, or that turns into the whole number 15. Did you get it correct? Okay, so let's take a look at the second one. We have 3 5/6. Again, change that to a fraction, 23/6. And then 1 3/4 turned into 7/4. Multiplied those out, got 161 24ths, or turns into 6 17 24ths. So let's do this last one together, or if you've already done it, you can check to see if you did it correctly. So I'm going to take 7/8. I don't have to convert that, it's already a fraction. And then I'm going to take the 5 1/2, and I'm going to convert that to a fraction. So I know that 5 times 2 is 10, plus my numerator is 11, so that becomes 11 halves. And then 7 times 11 is 77. And 8 times 2 is 16. And I'm going to convert that to a mixed number. So there are 4 16s in 77. So my whole number is going to be 4. I have 13 left over. My fraction part will be 13/16. So my final answer for that will be 4 13/16. So let's summarize what we have done today. We can multiply mixed numbers by changing both factors to fractions. The problem itself is going to determine whether to report your answer as a fraction or a mixed number. Mixed number answers usually will be when we have a real world type of problem, a real world situation, something that can happen in real life. Fraction answers, if we leave them a fraction, is probably going to occur when the answer is going to be used for further computation. So if you need to take that answer to complete another problem or something in that line. All right, so cowabunga, guys. Good job. Some things to think about, some things to practice. See you in class.